and welcome to this Premier Training revision video which will look at the techniques involved in flexing a budget. A budget is simply a financial plan prepared in advance based on a wide range of estimates. For example, to prepare a budget in a manufacturing business, forecasts will need to be made about how many units will be produced, what the materials will cost, what wastage there might be, what labour costs including overtime there might be, and so on. This is clearly a useful process for a business to go through, and a budget provides a clear set of targets for a business to aim towards to achieve its goals. Unfortunately, because the budget is based on forecasts, it's rarely, if ever, going to prove accurate. In particular, a problem occurs if the level of activity is significantly different from that which was originally planned. For example, imagine you were holding a party and decided to order pizzas in for everyone who comes. If you forecast 10 people would come, you might budget £5 per person, which would be a total budget of £50. However, it's extremely unlikely you would be able to meet this target if 20 people actually turned up to the party. You're very likely to spend more than your budget, but it's not really a fair comparison. Imagine you spent £80 buying pizzas for these 20 guests. Yes, you'll have overspent the original budget by £30, yet you could be quite pleased, and justifiably so, because in actual fact you'll have spent £4 per person and not the £5 originally estimated. You could even argue that you've saved money against the original plan. A worked example should help clarify this. JJ Limited has produced a budget, as shown here. There's a couple of things to note straight away. This is a budget prepared for a quarter or 3-month period, and secondly, it's based on a forecast production level of 2,000 units. Now, here are the actual figures for the period. Of course, these are not known until after the quarter has ended. We can see from this that the quarter appears to have been quite successful. Sales were higher, and so too is the net profit, compared to the forecasts in the budget. And we can use these figures to produce some variances. A variance is just the difference between the original budget and the actual figure. Variances are either favourable, when we earned more or spent less than forecast, or adverse, when we earned less or spent more than forecast. We can see here that the sales variance is favourable because we earned more from sales than we'd budgeted. However, the materials variance is adverse because we spent more on materials than expected. This kind of information is really useful to managers. However, it's only valid if the actual level of activity was the same as that for which the budget was prepared. So we now find that in actual fact we produced 2,200 units, and remember the budget was based on a production level of 2,000 units. Therefore, to make the comparison valid, we will need to compare like with like. We can't change the actual figures, that's what actually happened, so instead we flex the budget. That is, we rewrite the budget to create what it would have been had we originally based it on the actual production level of 2,200 units. This is a bit like the example of the pizzas earlier. Had we known that 20 people were coming, we would have budgeted 20 times £5, which is £100 for pizza. Here again is the original budget for JJ Limited. But we're now given some additional information about the way in which the different types of costs behave with changes in activity level. It's really important to understand whether a cost is fixed, semi-variable, variable or stepped. We can now start to work out some of the figures on which the original budget was based. If sales were budgeted at £80,000 for 2,000 units, then this will be £40 per unit sales price. Materials are variable, so the original budget of £20,000 for 2,000 units means that this must have been based on a forecast of £10 per unit. Labour costs are a little more complicated in this example. One worker can produce 500 units per quarter, so to produce the original budget of 2,000 units we would need 4 workers. They're each paid £2,000 per month, but remember, there are 3 months in the quarter, so the original budgeted cost is based on 4 workers times £2,000 times 3 months, which is £24,000. Production overheads are a fixed cost, but the general expenses are semi-variable. At 2,000 units, the budgeted cost of £16,000 is made up of a fixed element of £10,000 plus a variable element which must be £6,000 for 2,000 units. This is therefore £3 per unit. Now we can start to flex the original budget in line with the actual production of 2,200 units. Let's start with sales. 2,200 units at £40 each is £88,000. Materials are 100% variable at £10 per unit, so 2,200 units would have budgeted at £22,000. Labour, we know if one worker can make 500 units in a quarter, we would need 5 workers to make 2,200 units, assuming that we can only employ full-time staff. This means that labour here is a stepped cost, and because we've moved beyond the level at which 4 workers are enough, we are going to need to employ another. 5 workers times £2,000 a month for 3 months is £30,000. Production overheads are a fixed cost, and remember that fixed costs do not change when activity changes. So when we flex the budget, any fixed costs remain the same. At that time, we would have budgeted £6,000, whether we'd based the budget on 2,000 units or 2,200 units. Next, we can recalculate the budgeted gross profit by deducting the costs from the sales. In this example, our gross profit works out to be the same as the original budget, but this won't always be the case, and you will need to recalculate it. Now for the general expenses. These are a semi-variable cost, so 2,200 times £3 plus the fixed element of £10,000 is £16,600. Finally, we can recalculate the budgeted net profit, and this is now the flexed budget, flexed to reflect the increase in activity from the original budget of 2,000 units to the actual level of activity of 2,200 units. Now we can calculate the flexed budget variances, the differences between the actual costs and the new flexed budget. Again, show each variance as either favourable or adverse. This is now a much fairer picture of how well we did in the period, because we've compared like with like. Hopefully this has given you a little clearer understanding of how flexed budgets work and why they are needed. Thanks for watching.